What's up? Welcome back. Today, I am talking to a man who started out posting golf memes on Instagram and has grown that into a $35,000 a month business. That's just him. He has no employees, no overheads, nothing like that. He just makes 35 grand a month and pockets it, brings it home. I have Scott Boulis. I don't even know the name of your agency. I just know the golf brand is I Made Bogey. Before we get into that and how you did that, like tell me about what was your childhood like? You want to do some therapy? Should we do
Yeah,
some therapy? Tell me about
you
your childhood.
you told me we don't have enough time for therapy, so I'll keep it short lived. No, I grew up on the East Coast, so however much you know about that, it's golf is very popular. Golf, hockey, just a very competitive environment. So have swung a golf club for as long as I remember how to walk. So it's always been a passion of mine. And then same with hockey, still play both sports, super competitive. Men's league is, in my opinion, more competitive, is the most competitive level of hockey that I've played. And I've played a lot of different leagues. And I still live in the area that I grew up in. So there's like these fueled rivalries of people that I've played hockey against for 20 years. And yeah, so it's all, being on the East Coast is like a thing where you never leave, especially in a state like Rhode Island. It's a small state, but you never end up leaving, and I'm one of those guys.
You just kind of like live, grow up. What did your parents do? Were they like your parents entrepreneurs, or what are they up to?
Yeah, my mom, stay-at-home mom. My dad was always and still is a traveling salesman. So he's in the textile industry, 40 plus years, incredibly hard worker, like entrepreneurial mindset, but within a very old school trade. And there was points in time growing up where my mom had to be stay at home because he was living in New Jersey. So I have a brother and a sister, both older than me. So he would be in New Jersey from Monday to Friday, come home on the weekends, and then back in New Jersey for a pretty decent amount of time. So she couldn't really work. And then
Just your mom and your brothers and sister.
yeah, just taking care of the family. And then when he moved back, he would then still travel about 2 to 3 times a week, and still does now. I mean, he's 67, and it's crazy. He's like, as an example, he's going to India the end of this month. He's going for 2 days. And for me, like if I was ever going to India, I would go for like 2 weeks.
Not
I wouldn't
2 days.
I wouldn't make the trip if it was for 2 days. But that's just how he is, just incredibly hardworking. So like it's an interesting transition because with me in my career, went to school for accounting, never practiced accounting for a second of my life, um, and immediately fell into the startup world as soon as I graduated. And he always was understanding of it, like never really gave me a hard time. He never got it. Like the internet was, as you know, like with our parents in that demo, like when I told him I was going to sell t-shirts online for a living when I had left my job because I knew that it was sustainable and I knew that it would work. He was like, okay, I don't get it, but I trust you. I know you're going to work. I know you're going to work at it. So it's always been, and he's both of them, they're so willing to learn, but they're still always catching up. They always follow like the brands that I work with. They're always buying from them and staying in the loop and trying to follow what I do and like the memes that I post on my brands. But it's a learning
you,
curve, and they
your
were
parents are
accepting of
walking
it.
around with like spoof golf gear,
Yeah,
uh,
they have
parody
like
golf gear.
the stickers, like the stickers on the back of their car of like my brands and stuff like that.
This is like the
So
most supportive thing ever. Like,
it
yeah,
is. It's
it's our son's
awesome.
brand.
Yeah, when I didn't even know, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'm behind your dad right now. He has 4 bogey stickers on the back of his car." So it's just yeah, it's cool. It's like I said, as you know, things have changed so much over time, and they're supportive
Ask
of
me
it.
how I know it's your dad. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, so that's two questions. We're already two questions deep into this. We're going to do as many of the 21 as we can do. Um, Switching things up a little bit. Would you rather, for the rest of your life, have to talk like painfully slow like this, or talk so fast that people have a hard time understanding you?
Painfully slow. I've actually tried to uh, change my cadence and eliminate words from my vocabulary. You know me. When we would be on calls in our prior life, we could talk from sun up to sundown, and we would argue, healthy debate, and go on and on. And when I listen to a lot of podcasts, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I slow them down, and I have realized that some people, or more often than not, I've realized the people who speak at a much slower pace, there's more meaning to what they're saying, and it resonates more with the person that they're speaking to, or the audience they're speaking to. I've tried to be mindful of it. It's not in my DNA. Nothing in my DNA, nothing in my life is slow paced. I like to move at 100 miles an hour, and talking is part of that. But I would choose the former. I'm really actually. It's funny you asked that. It's something I'm working on.
Yeah, that's funny that you're working on it, because you have, you couldn't tell just, from listening to you that you're like an East Coaster. Um, but when you're on calls with other people who are like East Coast for life type people, you get like that, the words that are just specific to the East Coast, and the accent that's specific to the East Coast, and the speed and cadence of speaking kind of come out. I do the same thing. I talk fast, and I've noticed it's not necessarily that people talk slower and what they say is more meaningful. It's more that they're deliberate. One of the biggest problems I've noticed with myself, and things that drives me crazy as a podcaster, is how often I say the words like and because I'm going so fast.
In the Loom, in today's world with Loom, I struggle to listen to my recordings of myself. And a lot of that, the three things I picked up is that I say like and way too much. And the other thing is I smack my lips. Like I make this noise, and it drives me crazy. So I just wonder what the other person on the other end did. And I try and keep my looms about like 3 to 4 minutes, because after that, I think there's just a dramatic drop off in how long they're actually going to listen to them. And this was all part of it. This is where it came from. And I've forced myself to listen to the recordings. And as painful as it is, I actually
Yeah.
learned a lot from it. And I feel like I've gotten a little better at it. But it took me a long time to grow the courage to actually listen to myself talk, because it's not
It's
something I like to do.
it's the new version of watching game film, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. In our world, it is. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just you're putting the time in. You're in the you're in the film room and listening to yourself.
All right, I want to go back to golf and sort of the journey of bogey. So you said you went to college. Tell me your golf background. Actually, I think that's probably a good thing for people to know, because you're like a legit golf. I mean, there's probably other people who listen to this podcast who golf. You're like a legit golfer.
I play a lot of golf. I always have, and part of the reason why I love what I do for work is because it allows me to play a lot of golf. Um, it just sets up well with my schedule, and it works well. I have time to focus on my golf game at this point in my life, outside of family, friends, everything that's very important. It's one of the only things that I have left that I can better myself in that area and be competitive and channel my competitiveness, because I'm a very competitive person.
Yeah.
I've belonged to the same country club. My family's belonged there been members there for 40 plus years. So I've been there my entire life. Lindsay, my wife, and I were members there. I play in every competitive event. It's 10 minutes away from my house. So a lot of times I work from there. I take calls, and then I'll go and I'll hit balls in between calls and putt. I also played a lot of hockey when I was younger. I had a pretty bad accident. My last game of my senior year in high school, I had a compound fracture in my back, and it just it didn't allow me to do a lot of physical activity and anything like that. It kind of put an end to hockey for me for a long time, and golf too. And it was almost a crossroads for me because I knew that I wanted to continue a sport in some way, shape, or form. D3, a bad D1 school or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed the trajectory of kind of where I had to go to school and how I had to continue my education, because transparently, my focus was always on sports. School wasn't first
Yeah.
for me. It was hockey or golf, and that put an end to it. So from there, as it took about 6 months before I could really do anything, and I ended up going to Johnson and Wales for a year, knowing that I didn't want to stay there, and played golf for the team there. We actually won our conference. We went to nationals in Hershey Park, which was very funny. And I always knew that I was going to transfer to Bryant, which is a business school locally here. Like I said, not very far, still about 10 minutes. You'll notice everything that I say in Rhode Island, everything is 10 minutes away.
Yeah, it's
And
because the whole one side of the state to the other
it's 45 minutes. Yeah. So to go to the other side of the state is a journey. You have to,
that's an adventure. That's like your Frodo bringing the ring to Mordor.
You make a day out of going to the other side, which is 45 minutes, where for someone like you, like 45 minutes could be lunch. Like
that's like across. Yeah, no, I'm still in the same city. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Johnson and Wales with the intention of knowing that I could play golf, continue to play golf, and then always knowing that my priorities would shift, that I would then focus on school, and did very well, and then transferred to Bryant after a year. And it's funny because, after I played that 1 year, it was one of the best years of my life. I made lifelong friends, still incredibly close with the coach of the team there, talked to everybody, but I hated golf. I didn't pick up a club for, I don't know, maybe like 18 months after that. And we played the NCAA rules at that time, even for a D3 school. You're required to give everyone 1 day off in a 14-day window. So I picked my course load dependent on my golf schedule. So all of my classes had to be from 8 to 1. And then immediately after that, I would take a shuttle to get my car and drive to golf practice, which was every day, which was 18 holes. And then we would hit balls. So that was 5 to 6 hours. And then on the weekends, we would travel to tournaments, and we would get 1 day off after that. And again, like, it was a blast and, tons of fun, but I lost any sort of passion, and I regret it. I still talk about it to this day, where I regret those 18 months that I didn't play golf, because it was like a prime period in my life where, it probably could have been playing some of the better golf. And it takes a little while, like anything else, to pick it back up, and you have to play to be sharp. And that was a time where I just, I resented it. I didn't do anything golf related.
Okay. So you go to school, you play a year of golf, then you transfer to Bryant, you major in accounting. I don't know why. And then you graduate and you decide to sling t-shirts on the black market. Tell me about that, on the Facebook black market. Tell me about that.
It's a good question, because it's a segue into a lot of different things. Where I had a close friend of mine one of my close friends, was working for a startup called Teespring. 2 kids out of Brown had started the company, and the reason that they started it was for a project for school, where one of the local dive bars in the Providence area was set to close, and it was a staple of for Brown, for Providence College, for Bryant.
I think for context, when you say everything in Rhode Island is 10 minutes away, Providence is probably the biggest city in Rhode Island. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's 10 minutes away from you, right?
It's 7 minutes it's 7 minutes from
wow.
my house. Yeah, from my house.
Be specific in RI.
Yeah.
So, and Brown is based there. Brown is there.
Yeah. Brown is there. Yeah. So Brown is in Providence.
So everybody knows everybody is the short version.
Correct. Everybody there's one degree of separation. If you don't know them, you know someone that knows them. And that's true. And So my friend was working. He was one of the first employees at this startup, Teespring. Essentially, what it was think of just a drop shipping company that handled. Think of Shopify before Shopify, but
Yeah.
they took care of all the customization, all the customer support, the fulfillment of orders. They told you what your cost was going to be, and then you determined your profit and you set your price. And all you had to do was upload the design and description and products and that's it. So so he said, listen, this is a cool opportunity. You can come join the team as an account manager. The goal that we're shooting for is we want to go after artists, musicians. At this time, the Granite Mountain fire was happening, and we did a huge fundraiser for them where we made t-shirts and memorial coins. And really that's how Teespring got on the map, was unfortunately because of that event, but it really put it out there. And so our goal every day was to reach out to these Facebook pages. And what I realized was that what I realized is I'm reaching out every day. We had a number in mind, think of an account manager job, and reach out to 100 people a day, try and get them on the platform. And the pages that I was reaching out to at that time, this is in 2013 on Facebook, they were called I love fishing, I love trucks, I love cats, I love whatever.
Uh-huh.
They were all owned by the same people. And I started to realize that with the responses that I was getting, and was fortunate enough to meet some of these people who had masterminds, and these internet marketing masterminds. Who they were internet marketers, and they were farming these pages to sell product and to eventually get them to a certain point. Think of back at that time, you're familiar with it, of what organic Facebook was able to do.
Yeah.
And we put Teespring in front of them. So Teespring never had the intention of going after this group of internet marketers. We just stumbled upon them by reaching out to these pages and getting into these communities. And I started to learn the world of internet marketing from our users. And what they would do is they would launch designs that were scalable, and it would be, I am a Utah Jazz fan. I'm a Utah Jazz fan living in California. So you would target people in California that liked the Utah Jazz. And the click-through rate on those posts would be like 25 to 50% in some cases, because it was so specific. And then that idea was scalable by team, by sport, by state. I'm a grandma loving, horseback riding Utah Jazz fan that lives in California. And they would just take that template and from t-shirts, literal. So again, a Wild West back then, but it was a white background with a zoomed up image of the shirt and the design, and that was it. You just pulled the image directly from Teespring. You would do a PPE, a page post engagement, and then you would get that into your funnel, and that's what they were running. So two of our other account managers, as we started to know these guys and learn it, we had a really cool office. We had, one of those, your classic startups where they had a couple kegs on tap at all times. They would order us lunch and dinner to encourage you to stay. I was living in Providence, so I could walk to our office. So I would be in our office every night until like 10 p.m., just hanging out, playing ping pong, and, working in between. And we called, this is incredibly stupid thinking back at it now, but we called ourselves the Three Musketeers, and that was our Gmail account. And we were like, let's try this. So we started to do some of our own designs, and it started to take off to the point that we got pretty nervous of like, are the owners and founders going to be upset that we're using the platform? And it then became encouraged, because obviously we were using our own platform and knowing the seller's pain points. And Teespring completely shifted from someone that wanted to go after.
It had a very virtuous idea at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
It's like artists and, musicians and stuff. And then you're like, hold on, we could become a really big company if we just like these people who are already good at finding little hacks on the internet. At that time, it was Facebook, right? Like you could build a big fan page and sell stuff, or you could, basically pull Facebook data and target people very directly. And then, Teespring was like, yeah, remember that virtuous stuff that we were thinking? Screw that. Let's make a bunch of money.
Yeah, we went from like the definition of hockey stick growth
Yeah.
from these internet marketers, and insane. The company blew up. I was a very early employee, one of the first 20 employees. I think at our peak, it was, we had somewhere around like 1,200 employees once we had opened up our own facilities for manufacturing and everything like that. Offices in San Francisco, Seattle, a lot of ex Walmart and Amazon C-suite employees ended up over at Teespring, and really just the team. It was a very impressive group of people. A lot of Brown students and grad, anyone from Brown just following from their network had come over, and it was a lot of fun. And I eventually got to a point. I'll fast track this part of it, but I got to a point where I was running a program for our internet marketers it was very, very successful. However, a lot of them started to leave when Shopify came around because we didn't offer the customization in terms of we didn't give emails. They were owned by Teespring, so any sort of mail blast had to be done through the platform, which was not a great platform. Shopify was a easy switch, and I saw that. I saw how easy it was for them, and they just started to leave. So I thought it was a good point in my career to make the same sort of transition and try it myself full time, which worked. I was just doing the same thing that they were, just hiring overseas graphic designers to make scalable templates and everything like that. I mean, there was one phase where we would do people's names where you could scrape user IDs on Facebook. So people named John, and what I would do is my design, and I finally got good enough at Photoshop where I would create the designs and it would just say, it's a John thing. You wouldn't understand. And I would scrape that list with a third party tool of a custom audience of everyone named John. And I would go through every name. And then to take it a step further, with the name John, I would overlay a flag of a country. So Ireland, Italy, Mexico. Yeah. So that way they could tie it into their background. And it was very, very successful. And while I was doing that, that's kind of how I also started to consult and work with some other brands.
And just to be clear, that was, I won't call it full black hat, but it was gray hat for sure. I mean, Facebook didn't want you doing that, which is why they kind of closed that loop. But yeah, you could scrape the data, and anybody who was like a Facebook user in, I don't know, circa 2013 or so, maybe got ads that were like, it's a your last name thing. So it'd be like, it's a Coyle thing, or it's a John thing, like you said, or, sometimes it'd be like it's a Williams thing with the flag, that is their English or like a British flag or something like that. So it like seemed very like, oh wow, this is like very, very much me. Right. And people started to get creeped out by that, I think. And Facebook was like, this is a little too specific. And that's when it started kind of going broad. So like internet marketers do, you and others around this time sort of ruined the heyday of Facebook, but it was always going to evolve, right? Marketers are notorious for finding something that works and then just like beating it to death until the platform either closes the loophole or it doesn't work as well anymore because the consumer gets used to it. Another quick sort of question before we get into like how I Made Bogy was born, because that's what, the whole kind of title of this is like you were posting golf memes, but I wanted to give all this background because I think it's important to see, the golf, like you already had the golfer background. You were like very much plugged into the golf scene. And then you also get plugged into this like world of internet marketing and specifically doing something sort of meme-ish, something that's like very like speaks to a niche, right? Before we get into Bogy though, I got to know, live or PGA?
Yeah, this could be a point where a lot of people drop off the pod, but I'm a Liv supporter.
Oh boy.
I'm
It's only because you're a Phil fan.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was. So I'm left-handed. I've never been a Tiger Woods fan prior to everything.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of his. I think that Phil has been. This is incredible. This is wild to say, but I think that his career has been undervalued, and he's done so much for the game of golf, and so has Tiger. I will recognize that. I mean, no one would be where they are today without Tiger Woods, but I think that Phil was also just this huge ambassador, and I think that I think he is the person that you see. And I'm also a firm believer that Tiger's not the person that you see. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of things that justify that point of view. And I think Phil has changed the game of golf for the better. And right now, with it, like right in today's time, you can see that. You can see how Phil has made an impact not only just with Liv but with PGA. PGA's in a tough spot right now. The last tournament they had this past weekend was a signature event, and some of the stars, not only did they not make the cut, Tiger withdrew. Jordan Spieth got disqualified for a stupid rule of signing the wrong scorecard, literally because he was sick and had to run to the bathroom after his round and realized that he signed the wrong scorecard while somewhat in contention of the event. It's just a little bit outdated. And Liv has done a lot of things, I feel, to kind of keep up with our generation of golf.
Yeah.
And that's how Bogey came about. Was I worked in the golf industry. Oddly enough, I worked for Titleist. I was a club fitter for Titleist for when I was in college. And I worked at a golf store throughout high school and college. And I saw the demo. It wasn't us. It wasn't younger. And there was a
Yeah.
complete void in the market where I felt like there was an opportunity to go after the 18 to 45-year-old golfer, which I will say COVID played a big role in that.
Yeah.
People realized all they could do is golf, and then they realized it wasn't just this farty sport for old people.
Yeah.
It's like pickleball, until you play it.
Pickleball was another big beneficiary of COVID.
Yeah.
Uh, Pickleball. I'm surprised tennis wasn't a bigger beneficiary because that was one of the few activities you could
Well,
do. Well,
pickleball is,
pickleball is a little more accessible. Tennis is tough. You got to be in shape to play tennis.
and also it's pickleball. It's just a little bit easier. It's good for men. Couples can play together a
Yeah.
lot easier. They can play pickleball a lot easier than tennis. There's more court to cover in tennis. The ball, obviously, much different. Pickleball is, my wife and I, we play with my in-laws competitively. That we couldn't do that with tennis. We have a competitive game with any sort of demo, and the same can
Yeah.
be said for golf.
Yeah. All right. So tell me, so at this point you have a lot of experience with, you've been running Facebook ads for a while. You've kind of figured out this whole like world of how to make something go viral, so to speak, right? Or how to make specifically designs, products, memes sort of go viral. Um, how did I Made Bogey start? Was it just an Instagram page at first? Because this was where, when we say you're going from posting golf memes to 35K a month, this is what we really mean. Is that I Made Bogey, as far as I understand it, it started as just like an Instagram page where you kind of posted golf memes.
Yeah, I actually started I Made Bogey for the sole reason that I wanted a case study for any brand or client that I was talking to, because the majority of them are on Shopify,
Mm-hmm.
that I was dealing with the same pain points that they were dealing with.
Right.
From understanding that, really now the hot topics on Twitter, contribution margins, everything like that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's gonna not,
under,
let's not get too nerdy here. Jeez.
yeah, understanding that I feel those pain points when I'm buying their media, that the number and revenue number in Shopify is not representative of what the business actually is. There's a lot more to it. So
Yeah.
I didn't have any expectations. I knew, like I said, that there was a void in the market and that I could get it in front of the right demo very easily with just starting the Instagram page and then posting the memes and seeing where it was going, so that I knew I could put product in front of them. And then it started to work.
Yeah.
It really just started to tick off. The numbers made sense. Like I mentioned earlier, traffic was incredibly cheap. There was something there. It was more than just a case study, but at the same time, that's exactly what it was. So
Yeah.
when I had these conversations with brands that I would then go and buy their media or take some sort of fractional CMO type role, I could speak outside of just media buying, and it wasn't just here's
You were
on
an actual
platform
brand owner.
performance.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and if just, for anyone who doesn't know, if you look at on Instagram at I Made Bogy, it has quite a few followers. Most of the organic posts are going to be memes, but if you go to the store, the products are basically extensions of memes. And you had worked for Titleist, and you started this brand, and then you got sued by Titleist. So let's hear it. What'd you do?
yeah.
What'd you do to make Titleist so mad at you?
Yeah. So, am I allowed to say the word of
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
you're allowed to swear on this pod. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So, I had created a product that was, a parody of Titleist. It was,
yeah.
it,
And
it's
just for background, for people who aren't golf people, Titleist is like a very big golf company. They make clubs, and like some people will be decked out. Like they'll have Titleist clubs, a Titleist bag, a Titleist hat, and a Titleist polo. Like it's like one of the big kind of three golf companies that make most of the stuff in golf.
Yeah, fair. And it's old school,
Mhm.
down to the font. And I bring that
Right.
up because really what I did was I took Titleist and I used the same font and I slapped it on hats and t-shirts and apparel, and it said titties, and it took off the second I launched it. And I had people that were knocking it off from everywhere, but I was ahead of the curve. So
Did you run at, like, when you launched it, you put it on hats and apparel and stuff. When you launched it, did you run ads, or did you just like post it on your Instagram, or what?
yeah, I ran ads. I posted it on Instagram first, and organically, it was an indication that it was going to do well.
Uh-huh.
So I immediately posted ads, white backgrounds, hat floating in the in
White background with a white titties hat, and
exactly, yeah, just floating, a hat floating in the background. And it got to a point where I was doing everything was drop shipped, and it started to make more sense for me to look overseas for manufacturing. So I started to take in inventory from China and fulfill it,
Mhm.
and got into a pretty comfortable rhythm with a good manufacturing partner in China, and placed a large PO, and bam, slapped with the cease and desist from Titleist. From my Teespring days, I was very familiar with cease and desist because we floated in that gray area of sports team names, colors. So I knew it was a stop order. I knew that I wasn't in any trouble other than stop.
Right. Which is, I mean, when everyone says like, well, what if we get a cease and desist about this? I always say, well, if you get a cease and desist, then cease and desist. Like
Right.
that's it. That's all you really have to do, and it's
But most
not
people
like
don't
really anything
understand.
that serious.
Yeah, most people don't understand that. They will get something like that, and you could put any sort of verbiage in a cease and desist. We want all of your profits. We want X, Y, and Z, and really all you need to do is stop. At the end of the day, I'm not
Yeah.
a lawyer. This is not
Yeah.
legal
Not
advice.
legal advice,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, if you just stop, typically you're going to be fine. Yeah.
correct. So I had received that probably, I would say, I don't know, maybe a year or 18 months into selling the product, and I was going to stop. I really wasn't something I would ever have thought about exploring into a legal battle. But the next or a couple of days later, I woke up, and standard procedure for any of us is check my accounts, check Google Analytics, check Shopify, and it was 7 a.m. Eastern. It was my highest total revenue sales day and traffic, and I knew that I didn't do anything in my ad account to cause that. I was only running Facebook ads. I wasn't running anything else.
Yep.
Simple email and everything like that set
You
up.
woke
But
up and checked your Shopify, and you'd made more money that day by 7 a.m. than you'd ever made in any day ever.
Correct. Yeah. So now I'm going through the checklist of, okay, what happened. Uh, it was easy because I just went to Google Analytics and saw that the source was direct. So went to Google, typed in "I made bogey," and boom, 7, 8 articles, Bloomberg, Deadspin, Wall Street Journal, some lawyer publications, had written about the case. They found it, they wrote about it, and essentially all of them had the same point of view, that I would win if I decided to pursue legal action because it falls under parity law. And the example that they cited was, Chewy Vuitton, which was a knockoff of Louis Vuitton. And they won, and they fought it till the end, and they won. And I don't know if they're still around, but they had taken them the distance. And I reached out to someone locally for infringement law. He was obsessed with the case. He thought it was awesome. And he had the same point of view. He said, "You're going to win. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you a lot of money in legal fees, but I'll go through everything and walk you through the process." And that's what we did. I fought it for about 18 months.
And at that point, you were making enough money from the sales of the titties hats that you were able to pay for the legal fees. Like, it's like, this is kind of worth it.
I was doing, I was doing anything from, this is 3-putt, but I was doing wallets like these, and you can see on the back, this one's a little faded, but stamped "I made bogey" down here somewhere.
Uh-huh.
I was doing belts, socks, hats.
So you basically were taking this audience that you had gotten from like, people who'd bought in the Titleist knockoff or Titleist parody stuff. You knew that they were golf interested because it is Titleist is just niche enough, right? Where you'd have to be golf interested to think that's funny.
Right.
And then you're selling them other sort of golf meme kind of inside jokes type products.
Exactly. And the quality was great. Once I moved manufacturing over and had control over the actual quality of the product, branded, everything, it was really, really high quality product. And like I still use the wallets and still have boxes of socks in my basement and everything. And I fought it for 18 months, and it got to a point where they were about to settle, and they brought in new legal counsel. And when they brought in their new team, they wanted to make an example of this situation. So they said, "No, we're not going to settle anymore. We're actually going to take this to distance. We're going to take it to court." So my lawyer said, "You're going to win. It's going to cost you about $300,000 to get through this final stage. You can stop now, and we can still settle with them on their terms." What their terms was that I would stop selling the design, and I would be able to sell through my existing inventory for 60 days. It really didn't have any other option other than take it to court and decide to pay those legal fees. So I went with the route of settling. Whereas the route to settle prior was actually going to be a lot different, where they were going to pay us. They were going to pay me, and I would be able to continue to sell the product. So it was a pretty drastic shock to the system, and a stopping to that. And in reality, I ended up probably breaking even on everything, because of the legal fees are quite expensive when you get to that point for 18 months of dealing with a lawyer and going back and forth. But it was a springboard for me, because now I knew that I cultivated this audience of passionate golfers from 18 to 45 who weren't being served anything. They weren't being served ads. Because Titleist, Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, they're going after 55 and older. I saw that when I was working in the golf industry, and there wasn't, and there is now. I mean, Malbon, Bogey Bro, like all of these brands, they're Birdie Bros, whatever Macklemore's brand is. Like you see, they're going after this younger demo because there's space for it. And some professional golfers now are being sponsored by Malbon. Jason Day, one of Australia's greatest golfers, is sponsored by Malbon. They just sponsored one of the LPGA's best golfers is on staff, and it's a huge shift. So there's
The
Tons of
same thing's
opportunity, but
happening in
especially
the running world with brands like Tracksmith,
really.
where it was, for years it was Adidas, Nike, Brooks, and then Hoka came in and disrupted. Tracksmith is another one where it's like, I don't know, it's just a little different, and they're actually stepping up and sponsoring and like being real players in the space now, where for a while they were just sort of these fringe brands, right? So you decide to settle with Titleist. I want to get into how you've actually leveraged this long term into your current business. Before we do that, though, I got to ask you, if Bryson DeChambeau and Jake Paul got into a fight, let's go MMA fight. They fight in the octagon. Who would win?
Yeah, the only thing I'm not confident with Bryson in terms of that fight is I think Jake Paul is a little bit too tall for Bryson. I don't think
They're
that
the same
Bryson.
height. Yeah,
Are they
they're both.
really?
Yeah, Bryson's like a touch taller. He's 6'1", and Jake's maybe 6 feet. Bryson's got about 50 or 60 pounds on him, but Jake's a legit fighter.
Yeah, legit fighter. I've watched his fights. I mean, I think if I wanted to be controversial, I would say Bryson, but I think we both know that Jake Paul would methodically, take him down. But listen,
Bryson's a strong dude, and 60 pounds is a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. But listen, like I take the approach in the golf space where I like guys like Bryson. I love what he's doing, and
kind
I think
of an a-hole, kind of arrogant, like
I think
bit like different than what he's not a John Daly. He's not your Tiger Woods or Phil. He's a big, like, fit dude,
And I think arrogance is been portrayed upon him. I don't think I think because of the approach that he's taken to golf. I'll give you an example where a couple of years ago for the Masters, he made a comment to the media. He was playing really good golf and at that time, and he said that he felt that par for the course is 66, and I believe par at Augusta is 72. So in his mindset, basically all he was saying is I should shoot 66 whenever I play Augusta. I think that every golfer goes into a round with some sort of mentality like that, where they're looking at the course and saying, here's where I'm going to take advantage of my opportunity.
Here's what I think I can hit. Yeah.
The difference is that Bryson said it. He said it out loud. So he goes out that next day and shoots something like 76. It makes tons of errors, tons of mental mistakes, all Twitter, everywhere. Well, I guess you shot 10 over because he said that par was 66.
Instead of 4 over, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like, and again, I think that that's really good. I think that that's what golf is missing, is someone that goes out and says, like, this is just how I'm approaching the course.
I mean, when was boxing at its height? When was boxing at its most popular?
I would
when
say
it had somebody who was willing, exactly. When it had somebody who was willing to say, like, I'm going to knock him out in 3, which is hard. That's tough. And I know as a competitor, it's very tough to have that kind of, like, I'm going to publicly say it beforehand.
Yeah.
Mentality.
Because if you don't do it, you know what happens. So it's
right. Yeah. And you're nervous, and it's like, I don't know, I'm dealing with it myself right now. Like, I don't need to talk about how I'm going to do something, which is,
and golf, same as boxing. Golf, you're on your own. You're on an island. So you don't have, it's not hockey. It's not basketball. You can't pass. It's you shoot, every single time. It's you that's responsible for what you're doing. So it comes back to you ultimately.
I don't know how many questions we've gotten through. I'm going to guess like 11 or 12 of the 21. That's all right. But okay. So tell me how, all right. So, is Bogy the business at this point? Is I Made Bogy the store, the business, or how have you sort of leveraged what you're doing with I Made Bogy to build the business that you have now?
Yeah, I actually sold I Made Bogy about 18 months ago. I feel like everything I've said has been 18 months, but it's all pretty accurate.
10 minutes ago.
Yeah, 10 minutes away, 18 months ago. I sold it to essentially an aggregator whose focus was on AI. They were going to build tools internally to leverage the brands that they were acquiring and to grow them with their own proprietary AI. And the part of that deal which I was happy about, was that I would go and be a director of marketing for this brand. And so why I liked this was because I still had control over Bogy.
Yeah.
I could still see it through, still manage my own brand while managing the other brands and what we were doing there. Unfortunately, as everything else fell apart in the last.
As pretty much every e-commerce aggregator. And when you say an aggregator, just if people don't know what that means, it's like a VC fund that's specifically focused on buying a certain kind of business, right? They're aggregating, or they're bringing together a lot of one kind of business. So a few years back, there was a lot of e-commerce aggregators that were just buying up e-commerce businesses or Amazon businesses selling physical products. And they were like, Thrasio was a big one. And there were some other ones as well that were paying really great multiples and really top dollar for e-commerce businesses, with the idea that we're going to have a portfolio of a bunch of this same kind of business and it's going to work out great for us. And it hasn't worked out super well for any of them thus far, but hopefully some of them had enough foresight to know that they should be playing the long game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it wasn't the case for us. They went out and we had
when they raised a bunch of money. That's all of them raised a lot of money,
correct.
Which is the main problem, is that then you're answering to investors, and the investors don't have the patience, or you're supposed to be hitting returns on an 18-month period or something, and you're not hitting them.
Yeah, and it a short-lived, about a year. They ran through their capital extremely quick. It really had a roadmap of acquiring 10 to 15 brands in the first year. This is when things really took a turn, where brands just weren't selling like they were a year prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up just running through a lot of capital in a year and shut the doors. So that was the end of Bogy, and it left me at a crossroads, because they retained it. So it left me at a crossroads where I was still doing consulting work while I was full-time with them. And my book of business was large enough at that time to make the decision of saying, okay, I can go out and find something else internally with a brand, or I can take the leap and start doing outreach and, be a bit more public facing and take on more brands and build my book of business. So that's what I focused on for the year after that. At the time I had 5 contracts, and right now I'm at 13, with just myself. I'm in an interesting position where I'm a control freak. I like to be representative of my work. I want the person that I'm working with to be able to contact me directly at any hours with any questions. I don't want someone else answering questions that I want to answer.
Right.
I think you've always known that about me, and so that's how I run it. So it's good for 2 reasons. One, it's been great for retention. My retention is very good, and I'm super proud of that. But it does limit my ability to grow my book of business that much more than where I am right now. I have some room, because some of these brands that I've been working with have been for 6, 7+ years. So I don't want to say it's automated, but there are some things that require less time. So I have the ability.
You typically, what's the role? Because 13 is a lot. Are you actually doing heavy execution for most of these? Or are you primarily acting as sort of a fractional marketing lead? Maybe explain exactly what you're doing for these brands.
Yeah, it's actually a healthy mix. I would say for about, around half of those brands, I'm purely just media buying. However, with
running their Facebook ads, their Google ads, that kind of thing.
Running paid social or Google. Outside of that, there is always some layer of fractional CMO that I put as a touch on top of that. For some of the brands, it's purely fractional CMO, so it's managing agencies that they already have in place and putting a playbook together that makes sense and working with their team. And then for a handful of them, it's truly a combination of both of those things. So those are the larger roles where I am buying media and acting as fractional CMO. So it's a healthy balance between all of it.
So with 13, because a lot of people would hear that and be like, you're managing 13 brands by yourself. Just to be clear, some of those are probably pretty light touch. You're on a call with them every couple of weeks, and that's about the scope of the work. And maybe some Slack communication in between or whatever, or some text communication in between. But that's about the other people are executing, and you're sort of more eyes in the sky. Whereas some, it's heavier touch.
Yeah, exactly. So for last year, my total book of business for spend was $4.5 million.
Yeah.
So really, it was managing that amount of spend, which is reasonable for for that amount of brands and for one person. I find that to be incredibly reasonable. Some of those brands are spending $15,000 a month. Some in their peak periods are spending $300,000 a month. It's a pretty healthy mix between all of them.
Right. Okay. Um, and right now, so it's just you. You don't have any like VAs, nothing, nobody helping you. You're kind of doing all the execution yourself. Is it like, I mean, is it heavy? Like, are you working a ton? Like, how does this, how does this play out? Do you just kind of do this for forever, or what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's I feel like I have bandwidth. So I don't find it to be incredibly heavy right now. It hasn't impacted my golf game.
That's the most important thing.
I've still been able to spend time doing that. I mean, I work a lot. I work you I think anyone would understand this in our space. I work weird hours. I get some of my best work done from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. where it's the quiet hours, and same on the flip side from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. is where if I need to focus on something, I'm getting a lot of stuff done there. I'm on the phone a decent amount. I like phone. I don't like email. I like Slack. I'm fine with it, but I like to over communicate. And I think that my clients and brands, I think they like that too. I like
Mhm.
having the difficult conversations. I don't mind when things are going bad. I like to talk through it because I think it gives them a level of comfort.
Right. Okay. This has been a good time. Gonna do a little wrap here. Um, in your career, there's two questions I like to ask people, and it's, the context here is that sometimes I think there are podcasts like this where we talk about, what you did or what somebody did, how somebody did something, and people listen to it and they say, oh, I could just do that. So I like to ask two questions to give it context, to kind of say, look, I don't mean to be discouraging and say that you can't just do that. There are elements of it you can do, but there is always some places where someone was lucky and rode a wave that's just not, that wave's not available anymore. You can't ride that wave anymore. And there's also some places where somebody had some sort of competitive advantage. And I think I can spot some for you, but I would love to hear where you think, where have you been lucky? Where have you had, competitive advantages that somebody couldn't just, step in and replicate?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is going to be in a roundabout way of luck, in my opinion. And listen, I think that everyone creates their own luck. So
Mm-hmm.
I am a firm believer in, it's an outcome
And when
of
I say
hard work.
lucky, I think I mean macro trends. Where have there been macro trends that have really
Yeah.
benefited you that aren't available anymore?
Yeah. So my biggest, where I had my most luck was with jewelry. Rhode Island is used to be considered the jewelry manufacturing capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened in the last 30 years is it's transitioned from manufacturing, where that's been a dying breed because people have been taking it overseas, to where these jewelry brands have now had to transition their business and become a brand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I've been connected with the right people locally who have been
Yeah,
in that situation who, I would
because
say
they're only
almost
10 minutes away, so you
they're
already
only
know.
10 minutes away. Exactly.
Right.
They're all in Providence. And a lot of, about 50% of my book of business is jewelry related. And that came from referrals. I mean, and it's not just Rhode Island, it's across the
So they used to
country.
be manufacturers, and then now they've had to do what's called vertically integrating, and basically going from being just manufacturing and reselling the, to distribute to people who would sell it to the consumer, to now they're selling it to the end consumer, which ends up being a great advantage if you can figure out how to sell it to the end consumer.
It's 100% correct because the margins are unbelievable.
Right.
So for most of these brands, the margin on the low end is 80%. So they have a ton of room to play with. I mean, my within that book of business, some of these jewelry brands, their AOV is $50. Some of them it's $1,500.
Right.
So it really skews, but they've created themselves enough margin because they're experts at the manufacturing aspect of it. They're not
Mhm.
experts at the marketing and e-commerce factor of it, which is where I had luck in coming in and playing that role for them, and them just starting to see what e-com can actually do,
Yeah.
when in the past they were taking a hit on a bunch on a much lower margin when selling to
A middleman who
Chico's
sold to
or
another
Tiffany's
middleman.
or yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, Nordstrom, something like that. When then they just get it out the door themselves, the margins flipped. It went from they were 20% to now 80+% because they were
Right.
controlling the process.
Got you. And I would say that's kind of also a competitive advantage of yours is, just no, oftentimes it's a network advantage, right? Like it's who you know. Um, Other competitive advantages that I spot, I think, is that like somebody can't just come in and make a golf meme page. They have to be plugged in, right? Uh, it, any others you can think of where it's like, here's things about my success that not just anyone can replicate.
Uh, I think I think you kind of just nailed it with being plugged in.
Yeah.
For me, I'm obsessed with Twitter. I just had my 13th Twitter anniversary a couple days ago.
Well, your
So I've
13th Twitterversary, X-anniversary.
yeah, Exaversary. Yeah, I got the notification. So I've been it to me it's always been a platform that I use for a variety of reasons. I lurk a little bit in the shadows outside of sports. I'm a little bit of a troll when it comes to sports, especially golf related. But I have found that really staying plugged in every aspect of any of these platforms has been super beneficial to me. I've also found that I've created a playbook for myself that is very easy to replicate no matter what the brand is.
Yeah.
And I find that to be somewhat proprietary. I don't see many people run a similar playbook. I'm a big fan of simplification,
Yeah.
and I try and do that immediately. And I also, some people would suggest against this, but I try and teach along the way with the people that I'm working with so they can understand and speak the language that I'm speaking.
Right.
So that way, when
Ultimately,
things
you want
aren't
to be
going good.
seen as on the same side of the table as them, not the opposite side of the table.
Exactly. I
But
want to be a partner is all I want to be.
and I'll wrap this up and vouch for this because the truth is that like there are some generalized playbooks in marketing, and this is funny because I work at Triple Whale. As many people know, we have access to like 11,000 brands. There's no universal truths, and both you and I know that. But what you tend to do is you kind of say, here is the universal truth that I'm going to deal with. Here's the playbook that I'm going to run pretty much every time. And then you just find brands to work with that playbook will work for. And I think that's actually something that people can replicate. Like a lot of times smart people, I'm guilty of this, like have a hard time doing that because they're like, it's not universal. I can't apply it in every situation. But what you just do is you kind of say like, well, what is the plays that I run the most? And why don't I just look for the brands that those plays will work with and work with those brands?
Yeah, I
I think
run
that's
my
like a good
best.
idea for a lot of people to do.
Yeah, if it's 3rd and 6 and you need
Yeah.
a score at the end of a tight game, like I run my best play,
Right.
and I try and run that each and every time. And like I said, it whether it be jewelry, golf, supplements, the situation remains constant. The playbook
Yeah.
remains the same, and you run what you feel is best possible, and that always my big thing is transparency from both parties. I need as much information as you're possibly willing to give me from your end. I
Mm-hmm.
need to look under the hood. And if you're willing to give me everything, then we're going to be partners. If
Yeah.
you're not, and I don't have all of that information, then quite simply, it's
Yeah.
not going to work
We're
because
gonna
we're
have
not
problems.
going to have the same definition of success.
Yep. Scott, thanks for being on the pod. Where do people follow you?
Twitter is the best place. Like I said, it's very sports related. Just at Scott_Boulis, Boulis. I am in the midst of launching a new golf brand, so keep an eye out for
All
that. I
right.
will. You'll have to follow for more information, but I did post a Triple Whale screenshot of the launch
Nice.
pretty recently, and I asked you to press the magic button on the back end to give me some
Yeah.
better margins. I don't think you did it because I didn't see the better margins
Yeah.
come
Well,
in
I tried to
yet.
tell you the cheat code. You didn't use the cheat code?
I must have done it wrong. I must have been using the wrong
Yeah. Go
controller.
back
My
and look. Maybe
controller
I
must
typed it
have,
wrong.
it must have died or something.
All right, Scott. Well, we'll have to have you back on in 6 months to tell us how the launch of that brand is going. Go follow Scott on Twitter. Thanks for watching and or listening. As always, do the things, follow us, subscribe, like, comment, all the things that all the people ask you to do on whatever platform you're watching on. And we'll see you next time.